Hello, everyone. Welcome. Good morning, good afternoon. It's so nice to have you here. Thank you for joining. You are part of the Public Land for Public Good, Advancing Community Stewardship of Public Land webinar. We're thrilled to have you. We have here a pretty fun, joyous, and really smart group of people. And I'm talking about our speakers and our participants, and we're looking forward to the opportunity to get to know one another, hear from one another, and have a really good conversation. So we will be hearing from some of the folks that you're seeing on your screen in just a few minutes, but we wanted to get a sense of who was in the room joining us today and why. So I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself in just a moment, and I'll model that by formally introducing myself. I'm Sandra Vieira. I'm a director at Prevention Institute. We're a national public health nonprofit headquartered in Oakland with offices in Los Angeles, Houston, and DC. Myself and my colleagues from Prevention Institute, Grace Catango and Francisco Romero, you will see on your screen as well, are based out of our Los Angeles office. And they are part of the team that's making this all happen. So I'm really thankful for them. So let's hear from other folks. Tell us about you. In the chat, please feel free to drop your name, your organization, and what does public land for public good mean to you? What draws you here? What stood out to you about this session? And what could we learn from your work as well? So feel free to go ahead and drop some insight and information here. Name, organization, and what does public land for public good mean to you? Kayla, Margarita, US EPA, public land is a resource of ecosystem benefits. I love that. Yeah, who else is going to join Margarita? What does public land for public good mean to you? Karen Ernst from Ernst Consulting. Thank you for being here. Communities having access to the publicly owned land in their neighborhoods. John Duff, professor at UMass. I teach land use and environmental policy courses. Public land means benefits and responsibilities. Thank you, John. Alexandra, it means multi-generational care and cultivation. That's really important. Dan Brown, oh, good partners, Trust for Public Land. Hey, Dan, access to green space for community members. Tamara, ensuring that public resources experienced as an asset or value to the public. Absolutely. Yep. Sam, I see you on here too. We're going to hear more about public land for public good from you in just a second. I'm excited to dive into it with you. Jeremy. Advocate, general advocacy. Yep, public land for public good means holistic management to benefit all parties involved for as far into the future as possible. I love that. Oh, my good colleague and friend, Ruben, works in community safety and violence prevention. It means safe communities and connection. Thank you, Ruben, for being here. I love this. I am a slow reader, apparently, but you all are dropping really good insight. Agustin, P3 local partner, Project MIPA, welcome. Public land being used for the benefit of our communities and non-human relatives. Thank you for adding that piece, Agustin. Oh, I see Virginia, Vanessa. Shout out to Vanessa. We have
Hi.
Carolyn. Hi, Vanessa. Oh, yes, I love seeing your face on here. Katie, welcome. Public land is stewarded, loved by, and protected by people to enjoy for many generations to come. These are all so beautiful. We are going to capture all of these. We will separate them from name just to be able to share all of these important takeaways and messages. Yep. I love it. People talking about community stewardship versus private ownership, public. making sure it benefits all, climate action, using land to better the lives of the most marginalized. Hey, we have someone from Buenos Aires, Argentina. Welcome, welcome. Yes, making access to housing and urban land. So many concern about processes that make land accessible only to the wealthy. Yep. Alternative models. Absolutely. We're going to have a ton of resources and stories to add to this. So I won't have time to read everyone's, but we are capturing it and really appreciate everyone dropping what public land for public good means to them. This is the conversation that we want to have today and moving forward. So we really invite you to keep bringing this into our conversation and stay connected as we unpack this, because this requires more than 90 minutes, but I know we need to do it in chunks, and we can invite folks to be part of this moving forward. Thank you for sharing. I wanted to share a little bit of context for today's conversation and what we're hoping to seed and move forward. This theme, this session comes from the People, Parks, and Power initiative that's led by Prevention Institute, funded by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, but led and spearheaded and envisioned and energized by the work of 14 communities across the US, and especially a subset of 7 who have been working over the last 4 years to help ensure that people, Black, Brown, Indigenous communities, people of color with the least access, with the most historically disinvested communities, with experiencing oppression at so many levels, have access to public spaces, green spaces, spaces to be in community, be part of community, and in that process, build power for other facets of land justice, and community health and well-being. So the People, Parks, and Power Initiative was shaped and influenced back in 2020, after the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and inspired and energized by the call to action that followed that, for a lot of groups and sectors that were calling to action, a need to address racism as a public health issue, as a community issue, and as an issue that we as residents, as advocates, as practitioners in our fields could work together to advance. So People, Parks, and Power built off of that. It was launched in 2022. And here are some of our core strategies. A lot of this information can be found in Changing the Landscape, People, Parks, and Power. It's a summary document, and we'll share that resource in just a little bit. But the main tenets of this are about shifting from a focus on park projects to policy and systems change so that we can create park equity and land justice at scale. One of the major tenets here as well is about investing in power building as a core strategy for park and green space equity efforts, recognizing that power built for parks will translate into power built for interrelated community priorities like housing justice and climate resilience, immigrant rights, etc. The other strategy and focus for P3 has been about building national momentum for park and green space equity in order to create a more fertile ground for this approach and the innovators on the ground. So we want this to not be something that is only available and accessible to the communities that are part of this initiative formally, but really that the learnings, the insights can be shared across the nation with other groups, and that we're learning from other people as well. So this is in service of that opportunity. Just wanted to highlight the 14 communities that are part of the People, Parks, and Power initiative, representing different parts of the country, different communities, different histories, but a real shared connection to a future that ensures equity and justice for all. Finally, this is something I wanted to share with you as we dive into our conversations with our speakers. So much of what we've learned over the last 4 or 5 years feels hard to encapsulate in conversations like this one, in blogs and in briefs, but we're doing our best to do that. And we have, through a partnership with Karen Ernst at Ernst Consulting, developed this resource, this product, Public Land for Public Good, Advancing Community Stewardship of Public Land, which is a brief that captures many of the stories that we'll talk about today and more, and helps to create a bit of a container about the different mechanisms and opportunities to advance community stewardship of public land. So if you registered, which you did because you made it here today, we are going to send this document your way post-webinar, and it'll be available on our website shortly, sometime this month. So we'll keep you updated. A few points of recognition. Just wanted to call out that the inspiration and direction of Public Land for Public Good, and particularly community stewardship of public land, is really drawn from and inspired by Indigenous communities and leadership across the world. Community stewardship is a truth and a principle for so many Indigenous communities. And many of us are learning this and taking this on. And we really want to acknowledge and follow the insights of our Indigenous communities and leaders across the world, particularly Sogorea Te Land Trust, who really inspired the P3 initiative to take on this challenge and to show up in a different way and move from this language and framing around ownership and disconnection from land to being part and being in a relationship with land and being stewards of land. So we really appreciate that. There's going to be multiple dimensions and facets of these terms. We'll get to some of them today and invite you to be part of additional dialogues moving forward through our discussion that will take place through the P3 National Network. So we'll share some ways in which you can get connected to that post today's webinar and join us for more conversation if you would like. So with that, I'm really excited because now I get to hand it over to some really good partners, friends, colleagues, and people who I just can see and have talked to and are really committed and passionate about this principle of public land for public good and community stewardship for public good. So I get to welcome the team joining us from the Lincoln Institute of Land Policy. And first up, we have Sam Moody, Community Land Campaign Manager. I'm not going to read his whole bio, but we will drop a link to their website. There's a lot in there. Sam, I love your bio. It speaks to who you are as a person and a professional and the connection between that, which is so important to keep up. But just to give you a little preview, as the manager of the Lincoln Institute of Land Policy's Community Land for Community Benefits campaign, we're going to learn about that in just a minute. Sam connects communities with the resources and support to understand what land they own, which community needs it is best suited to address, and how to most effectively leverage the value of that land to benefit the community. Sam brings a deep love of and expertise in teamwork and translation to his work. So we're excited that we get to be part of your team for a little bit, Sam, and appreciate everything that you're bringing today. Before I hand it off to you, I also am going to introduce your colleague, Raina, since you all have a very cohesive set of messages and resources to share. Raina Chano Murray is an associate director, the Center for Geospatial Solutions, and she'll tell us a little bit more about that. She brings a decade of experience in administering geospatial systems, as well as background in workflow automation, urban planning, and cultural heritage management. So she's going to share a new resource and something that everyone here can tap into. So we're really excited, and thank you to Lincoln Institute of Land Policy team for being here today and for being our co-sponsors for this conversation. Welcome. Welcome, Sam.
Thank you so much. I just had to find my mute button, and what a generous introduction. Thank you. Um, I'm Sam Moody. I manage the Lincoln Institute of Land Policy's Community Land for Community Benefits campaign. My job here really is to tee up Raina and the work of the Center for Geospatial Solutions. But I'll introduce you to our campaign briefly. We work to connect communities and practitioners with a suite of Lincoln Institute resources that help them accelerate the activation of community land to address community needs, like affordable housing, nature-based solutions to climate risk, and green space parks. Our campaign is organized around three key activities: finding the right land, fixing the rules so that the right community activators can be in charge of and responsible for that land, and funding projects by leveraging the value of the land and helping communities build effective public, private, and nonprofit partnerships. The work of the campaign really starts with the Who Owns America database, which was created by the Center for Geospatial Solutions, and which tracks parcel level ownership data across the country. Um, the resource we're going to introduce you to here is a ownership and mapping tool. Thank you. So I did forget to hit next. So what does it take to find the right land to solve a community challenge? And what exactly do we mean when we talk about community land? You'll hear from my colleague Raina about the CGS's land inventory tool shortly. But I live in the West, where if you talk about activating public land, that tends to make people think you're talking about selling Bears Ears or Yellowstone. Um, when the reality is that the best land for solving community challenges is already inside the community. So when we think and talk about community land, the biggest piece and what the CGS inventory starts with is publicly owned, land owned by federal, state, and local governments. But we also have quasi-public landowners, our land banks and land trusts, port authorities, and affordable housing development corporations. And beyond that, communities have civic institutions. You've got your community foundations, universities, and religious institutions. These are all mission-driven landowners that have an interest in serving the community. The kind of land we're talking about and that Raina will walk you through, thank you so much, is urban, it's transit-oriented, and mostly owned by state and local governments. It's not existing wetlands, conservation, or park space. It's underdeveloped, mostly without buildings on it. Here you can see an example of the city of Chicago's public land inventory. And if you hit next, you'll see a zoom in on that example of one of these plots. City owned, underutilized, tends to look like it's small and fragmented, tends to look like surface level parking lots, gaps between buildings. And if you hit next. But you can also find larger institutional plots, and we can zoom in here, like a decommissioned hospital campus, or right in my hometown, an abandoned BMX track owned by the State Department of Personnel and Administration. Hit next, we can zoom in on what that looks like a little bit. We've all walked past one of these empty lots in our communities. You can even find them in New York City, and wondered what could be done with it. And that really starts with understanding who owns it and whether their mission is aligned with the best use of that land. If you can establish and if you can hit next here, if you can establish a complete map of the land available to a community, it makes it much easier to put the right solutions on the right parcels. We're always going to encounter disagreement or conflict over what to do. Whoop, back one. With a community resource like land. But a full map makes community negotiations and advocacy and solutions like land swaps much easier. Whether you're advocating for parks, green space, or affordable housing, knowing where to put it and who owns that land is essential. But we don't always have these maps already. Most communities don't have a clear picture of what land is available to their community. And that's primarily because ownership is fragmented across many different civic actors. In one town, you could have city-owned parcels from tax foreclosures, Department of Transportation land purchased from a transit project that was changed, plots of land owned by your local school district, owned by your local community foundation, plots of land in a land bank, plots of land owned by a church that were donated by members of the church. And do all these actors know what each other owns? Are the lots that are best suited for parks owned by the Parks Department? And are the lots that are best suited for housing owned by the Affordable Housing Development Corporation? Can a community really steward its land if ownership records are fragmented, incomplete, and inaccessible to the public? The answer is often no, and that puts us in a position where we, rather than looking at a full map, find one piece of land that is available, and then usually have a big community fight over what we should do with that one piece of land. If we can build a whole map and understand what options we have, we can navigate that community decision-making process a lot easier. So, Raina, how do we build one of these maps?
Great. Thanks so much, Sam. Next slide, please. Sam has teed me up very well. Thank you all for having me today. As Sam noted, one of the big questions before you can even really get started to thinking about where does it make the most sense to build, how do you balance these competing demands for land, is you need to have a good understanding of what's actually on the ground. And um, while there are sites that local communities may be aware of because you pass by it every day, you may not know the full extent of inventory that could be available. And so, what I will walk you through is one example of how we have created a public lands inventory for a partner. Next slide. Before I do that, I'm just going to quickly give you an intro regarding CGS. So, we are a center of the Lincoln Institute of Land Policy. Um, and as a center, our particular mission is to enable data-driven decisions for the greater good of land, water, and people. Next slide, please. And fundamentally at CGS, we believe that better decisions around whether that be about housing, about infrastructure, conservation, community well-being, et cetera, we believe that that really depends on having good data. Next slide. And in the context of public lands, without knowing where our public lands are, as well as their current use, I should also note here, as well as their current condition, it is impossible to basically balance competing demands for land. And we know, as Sam alluded to this, there's a lot of different demands for public lands, whether it is thinking about transforming underutilized lands into affordable housing, or making sure that we do a good job with stewarding and conserving lands, that there is equitable access to green space. Um, so, regarding where land is, the program that I run at CGS is called Who Owns America, and it is our initiative to map out ownership for every parcel in the United States. This is our latest snapshot as of November 2025. We run this every single year, and what this basically does is this creates a snapshot in time regarding the state of ownership across the country. I won't go into too many details around how this data set is created, but suffice to say, Sam again teed me up very well. As he noted, data can be fragmented, it can be hard to access. It can also be extremely fragmented with regards to the lack of standardization. So, how one county collects data versus how another county collects data, how certain fields are formatted, how they are defined, what it means when we have a field about owner, or about say like a land use description or zoning code. All of those, there's no standardization of that across the country. So in order to create what we like to call a research ready or an analysis ready data set, we do a lot of work here at CGS to essentially clean and standardize tax assessor parcel data. We do a lot of bringing in of additional supplementary data sets to help us with this cleaning process. Um, and what we're able to produce is a fairly robust snapshot of where we classify the ownership of every parcel across the US at a particular point in time. Here on this map, yellow, as you might have guessed, is our public land. So this represents federal, state, local, tribal, as well as government-owned land that we couldn't quite classify into one of those other categories simply because of lack of detailed enough information to do so. And this data set really forms the basis for our work on public lands. Next slide. Oh, sorry, next slide, please. Thank you. So we start with that Who Owns America data set. We start with having this view, a better understanding and a cleaner data set of ownership across the country. But that's not enough. On our end, I always like to say we work at a national level. We are working to create this data set, but we know actual action happens on the ground in local communities with folks who are very connected to their area, who have a deep understanding of what's happening. So I always talk about how local context matters. And so our methodology, I'm going to walk you through this methodology that we've done for a particular project in Colorado that's currently ongoing. We focus first on collaboration. So working with our partners to better understand the local data, local data context, as well as any nuances, and also to identify what additional metrics are necessary other than ownership to help our partners assess and balance competing demands for land, whether that is information regarding zoning, whether that is information regarding like climate resilience or the topography of the area. We work with our partners to understand what are the metrics that are most important to them. And we essentially then move to data integration, where we identify, acquire, transform, and integrate that additional data to create a comprehensive inventory of public lands and their key characteristics. We also then work with our partners on visualization. So it's not enough to have this data. As you can imagine, it's also quite a bulky data set. So it's important to think about how we develop interactive web application interfaces that will enable our partners to explore the inventory and to better understand the data themselves. Next slide, please. So in the case of Colorado, we worked with our partner on the ground there to create this comprehensive inventory of public lands. So here is a current snapshot of our web application that we built out. And what you're seeing there is all of the public lands that we have identified across the state of Colorado, whether that is federal, state, local, tribal, et cetera. Approximately 115,000 parcels totaling approximately 28 million acres. We then worked with our partners to identify additional metrics. Next slide, please. And those additional metrics are what we can use to then to enable our partners to essentially filter and better assess the parcels themselves. What I have as an example here is for this particular partner, there was interest in doing a site suitability quick exemption to immediately rule out certain parcels. So for when evaluating parcels as candidates for, in this case, housing, there were certain parcels that they wanted to be able to exclude immediately from the beginning. So, for example, Colorado is a very, very rugged state. I live in Maryland, but I've been humbled by many a hike in Colorado over the years. And so, as you can imagine, one of the metrics that our partner was interested in was that they did not want to necessarily build on very rugged terrain. We also don't want to suggest building on existing parks, on forest, grasslands, other protected areas. And from a sustainable development perspective, our partners wanted to avoid areas that score high on FEMA's National Risk Index, taking into account things like risk of flooding or wildfires, et cetera. So what you see here is the number of parcels. Oh, I'm sorry. And then also we were avoiding active brownfield sites. So these are additional metrics we have built into our parcels. And what you can see here is that when that is applied, 22,000 parcels fall into this exemption, essentially, of these are parcels that should not be considered from point blank regarding housing. Next slide, please. We also include, separate from that quick exemption, a variety of other metrics that our partners are able to filter through and are able to toggle on and off and essentially use to filter the data to meet their needs and requirements at that time. So one of the things that I really like about the way of doing about this process is so often if we're asked to do a site suitability score, we are thinking about a particular use case or metric, a particular use case, and we can provide a report or a static map on that. But by baking in a lot of metrics and giving our partner the ability to essentially toggle them on or off, it enables our partners to use this for not only that one use case that they originally came to us for, but to think about and use this tool for a variety of other contexts. Again, going back to this idea of there's a lot of competing demands for public lands, and it's important to give partners the ability to understand all these different cases. So here we were showing just parcels that are where the owner's name was state of Colorado. And you can see that that is a significantly small number, 391 parcels. Next slide. And we can filter that down even further by exploring neighborhood characteristics. So oftentimes government parcels have zoning classifications like special. So one of the things that we did was we calculated the majority zoning classification of a parcel's census block group. This way you can understand what the context of the surrounding area is. So here, we're looking at state-owned parcels, specifically where state of Colorado is the normalized owner name. And we're searching for parcels where the majority zoning for that area indicates a largely residential neighborhood. So the zoning categories are things like single family, multifamily, mixed use. And so this is a way that it enables the partner to be able to look at to narrow their search to parcels that are owned by a particular entity that may already be in residential neighbor, kind of more primed for residential use because of where they are located. You also see we're looking at parcels that are already in existing water service areas, which means they have a certain level of service already provided. And sorry, I know I'm past time. Let me go, next slide, please. This is just the next slide is just to show you that the full amount of information that we bake into these parcels. Here's an example where our partner can then go and review further information regarding this parcel as they continue to assess it for its potential applicability to, say, as a housing candidate or a different use. And next slide. And then last, we also collaborated with our partners. And in this case, it was really important for this project for them to have the ability to flag parcels and add some notes so that they can essentially single out for parcels of interest. The idea being once a partner is able to review that parcel and they decide this is in fact a good candidate for X or Y use, they are able to add notes to this parcel, flag it. That makes it easier to go find it later to use it for the further effort. So we've included like a project management component to this. And then last slide. So going back to our methodology and going back to what Sam was saying, projects like this enable our partners to better understand the extent of public lands through this type of public land inventory. It enables them to review this information using filters and essentially explore this information and then act it to for whether that be for thinking about public land for housing, for conservation, for other community uses, etc. So thank you so much. And with that, I will pass it on.
Thank you, Raina and Sam. This is really an exciting set of tools and resources that I know folks are going to really want to dig into a little bit more. And, I was on this webinar, but I was very tempted to like jump on and be like, let me look up some parcels of lands, which I may do right after. But can you clarify, Raina and Sam, are folks, this is publicly available. Folks can, how best do they access this?
So unfortunately, it is not. That is a particular project that we're working on for a partner. What we are currently working on is creating some sort of aggregation layer, and that could be made publicly available and shared so that while you may not get the exact parcel itself, you would be able to say click on like a census tract and get a summary of the number of parcels that are government owned there and their classification as well as their acreage. So that is something we're working on.
Helpful. Thank you. That'll be exciting to see that kind of in its next phase. And layer. Great. Well, if you have some questions for Sam and Raina, we want to make sure to collect those and have those ready for our sort of open Q&A. But thank you, Sam and Raina, for sharing this with us, and we're excited to keep talking together. We are going to move forward with some of our additional guests and speakers. We have the honor of getting to hear from two of our P3 local partners today, Matthew Shore from South Bronx Unite and Miranda Harris from Central Texas Interfaith. And they are going to share more about their work, their organizations, their collaboratives. You'll hear, how important collaboration and partnership is to this work and how really centering and grounding the work in equity really ties into these amazing projects and efforts that they've been able to steward along the way. So we're first going to hear from Matthew, who's Director of Planning and Development at South Bronx Unite, and then we will get to hear from Warinda at Central Texas Interfaith. Sorry, my voice would be failing right about now. To tell you just a little bit about Matthew and Warinda, I'm going to share that Matthew is an embedded planner, organizer, and policy enthusiast inspired by grassroots movements focused on community stewardship, health, and racial justice. He's a Bronxite from Bedford Park, He's active in Bronx-based efforts that aim to upend extractive planning and development in exchange for long-term community-led solutions that build community right to self-determination borough-wide. And he's been very generous in sharing his insights and work with our P3 collaborative network and partners near and far. From there, we're going to shift over to Warinda. Warinda Harris is an organizer with Central Texas Interfaith, CTI. CTI is a nonpartisan, multi-issue coalition of 50 congregations, schools, worker organizations, public health clinics, and nonprofits that work together to address issues affecting the well-being of families and neighborhoods across Central Texas. Drawing upon 20 plus years experience in interviewing, investigation, and storytelling, Warinda identifies, develops, and promotes community leaders, training them to share and shape their stories and build connections with others in order to implement public action. So we have two incredible ambassadors and examples of this work. I'm going to invite Matthew to join us. He's going to steward his own slides today. So I'm handing over control. Matthew, I trust you. I welcome you and excited to get to hear more.
Sorry, just coming off of mute. Thank you so much, Sandra, for the amazing introduction. So great to be with a global audience of diverse stakeholders, all doing the work and all excited about public land for public good. Let's make it happen. So I hope the screen share is looking okay. Yes, so my name is Matthew, as was stated. I am with South Bronx Unite. And also, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention our community land trust, the Mott Haven Port Morris Community Land Stewards. And yeah, South Bronx Unite, we do a lot of things that will be difficult to condense into such a short time frame. But namely, we focus on environmental justice and health equity in the South Bronx neighborhoods of Mott Haven and Port Morris. And we are in New York City, if it wasn't stated as well. And so, yeah, the South Bronx it's an amazing place, and it has a rich history. I mean, this is where hip hop, salsa, originated. It's a place of great resilience, and the immigrant community is very strong, particularly the Latinx community, African Caribbean communities. These are all communities that have thrived and really brought so much to the community fabric. And so, I'm going to be presenting, today on green space equity and some of the coalition work that we do, and, touching on public land for public good legislation. But just before getting into the coalition work that we do, I think it's important to provide some context on the neighborhood issues that we are seeing. So there's a lot that we have in our built environment in Mott Haven, Port Morris, that affects people's health directly. So we are what the city and the state identifies as an environmental justice community. And so we are on the front lines of air pollution. Unfortunately, the community is nicknamed as Asthma Alley. So 1 in 5 children in the South Bronx, unfortunately, suffer from asthma. And why is that the case? It's because of our built environment. We have a lot of pollutant infrastructure, highways, waste transfer stations, 4 peaker power plants, and we have a lack of green spaces per capita. So in a neighborhood of 60,000 residents, there's only one real natural green park, St. Mary's Park, and it's not enough for the whole entire neighborhood. And the other thing is we're surrounded by water. We're on a peninsula. We have the Harlem River, we have the East River, and we by and large don't really have access to the waterfront, which is so unfortunate. People have to go to Brooklyn, Manhattan, Queens to access a space that provides so many mental health benefits. There are studies that show that being next to water, it reduces levels of stress, and the community is being deprived of that. And we're also in a high-risk flood zone. So when Tropical Storm Sandy came through, residences, businesses were flooded, costing millions of dollars in damages. So we're all about nature-based solutions, bring and community solutions. everything that we do at Sub Bronx Tonight is about organizing people that are impacted by air quality, environmental injustices, who are the experts on is happening in their community, and who are the proponents of change. And so, to that end, we have created a community plan, a community waterfront access plan. Let's bring people to the waterfront. Let's, handle the flooding issues, etc. And we have also built up a community land trust, which is all about reclaiming public land for public good. And I'm going to touch on that now. That's a great segue. So we can't do this work alone. We have to be in coalition. In a city as big as New York, over 8 million residents, we know that our community is not the only community that is struggling with environmental injustices. So there's a community land trust coalition known as NICELY. That's their acronym. Their actual title is New York City Community Land Initiative. And I'm happy to drop these links in the chat. I know Grace is doing amazing work doing that as well. Thank you, Grace. And so this coalition is about community land trusts, which are nonprofits that are community rooted and comprised of community members that understand that we need deeply affordable housing, not just affordable housing, deeply affordable housing. We need more green spaces in our communities. That oftentimes, unfortunately, there's a correlation that has finally been acknowledged by the city, that there is a correlation between communities of color and lack of green spaces and disproportionate, poor health outcomes, right? So community land trusts are organized into, acquire and to, let's say rematriate land and steward it for community benefit for generations to come in perpetuity. Usually, when a community land trust rematriates public land, it's in perpetuity. It's through what the city will call a 99-year lease. And so, for a while, this coalition has been focused on housing. And when South Bronx Unite, has been involved in this coalition, we said, let's make a green space equity committee. And, we know a lot of people care about this. And we know that green spaces deserve to have equity at the center. So many times we talk about parks and equity needs to be centered more. So this was an opportunity to do that. And so these are all the members that you see on the screen right now. We have members from all of the boroughs, and one of the things that we are actively advocating for is, besides doing learning exchanges and learning from each other about our place-based campaigns and meeting community land trusts from across the nation. We've met with Southside Community Land Trust in Rhode Island. We've met with Philly Peace Park in Philadelphia. We also know the importance of advocating for legislation to scale up community land trusts. So to that end, we are in the city council level in city government, advocating for this legislation known as Public Land for Public Good. And so what it would do is often the city disposes of land and it's often, not always to nonprofits who are more equity focused. We've seen with a housing development that, when land is disposed to private developers, usually those developers are not developing affordable housing. Nonprofits have a better track record of developing affordable housing. The numbers don't lie. And so what this legislation would do is whenever the city disposes of land, community land trusts and nonprofit developers would have the first priority when, to receive that land. So this would help to scale up not only of housing development, as I've been mentioning, but green space development, equitable green space development. Let's insert that word. And so that is really, really exciting. And there's a lot of support in City Council. The majority of the members support this. We have done webinars with City Council members, and we just have to keep pushing. We have a new mayor now that, is focused on economic justice. And we are very hopeful with this new mayor administration that we can advance community land trust legislation, not only public land for public good, but a package of bills known as the Community Land Act. So, I touched on a lot of the challenges associated with, frontline communities in New York City. Um, and yeah, there There is, across the board, a deficit in green spaces and environmental justice communities. But on the topic of community stewardship, we're not new to this, we're true to this. We see that in the South Bronx already, there, through again the immigrant communities, we see community gardens that have propped up from something out of nothing, from vacant lots and rubble and debris that have been neglected by the government and have turned them into thriving urban oasis areas. And in the South Bronx, you see a lot of what are called casita gardens. These are thriving, again, immigrant hubs of exchange, of community gatherings, of mutual aid, of disaster relief, of many different things. And so these are the things that we are proposing with Community Land Trust Green Spaces. And a successful case study to add to that, we are proud to say that we are bringing the first Community Land Trust Community Center to New York City, y'all. Super exciting. And it's going to be known as the Heart Center. Again, there's so much rich history behind this building that is difficult to condense into a short time frame, but basically it's an adaptive reuse project for a building that was originally built in the 20s that was owned by the city's health department. And so fast forward to the 70s through the 2000s, there was an amazing, equitable, programs happening in this building with a focus on holistic health and wellness in a community that was, again, struggling with many disproportionate health outcomes. Our, Lincoln Hospital is a famous example. That's our public hospital in the neighborhood. It used to be known as the Butcher Shop. And there's a famous documentary that New York Times has published on YouTube called The Takeover of Lincoln Hospital. There's a lot of history that I can't, again, but the Young Lords, they're super important throughout that time in the 70s and were proponents of holistic health, which was really present in this building that used to be known as the Lincoln Recovery Center. It's not Lincoln Hospital, it's a smaller building in the neighborhood. And you had people like Dr. Matula Shakur, former Young Lord members who were given acupuncture to a community that was, that was really, really struggling with drug addiction at the time and didn't turn anybody away. And so for whatever reason, the city decided to close down this building around 2012 and close down operations. So South Bronx Unite and the Community Land Trust decided not to rest on its laurels. They refused to accept another symbol of blight in the South Bronx and in the Bronx in general. We have the nation's largest former military armory in Kingsbridge, the Kingsbridge Armory. And, for my whole life, that building has been decommissioned, but also rotted and fallen into disrepair, and that's publicly owned. So the community decided to organize and to change that reality and form another community plan and partner with mission aligned partners. And ultimately, through years of organizing and sustained pressure, the city said, okay, you guys got it. We get it. In 2022, the city issued an RFP, an open call, let's say, for developers interested in the redevelopment of this 23,000 square foot building in the neighborhood. And we decided not to sit by the sidelines and be just only advocates, but to actually to be a part of the redevelopment of the building, to partner with a mission aligned developer, and to have this be a part of a community land trust where the board of the community land trust is comprised of community members who would have a say in the financing, in the development, in the operations, and the programming of this building. And I'm proud to say that in 2023, the city selected our community land trust to redevelop this building into what is going to be known as the Heart Center. H for health, E for education, A for arts. So some of the tenants that will be in this building, sorry, I know I'm going over time, include Green City Force. They provide workforce development for NYCHA residents. NYCHA is public housing residents, of which 25% of the neighborhood lives in public housing. There's several public housing developments just a stone's throw away, literally adjacent to the Heart Center. And Upbeat NYC, they provide free youth music education to the community. Currently, they're operating out of a small space in a church around the corner from the building. It's not adequate enough. And that's the other thing that our community has been lacking real adequate community spaces, third spaces. Um, and maybe community centers that are labeled as such are actually cost prohibitive. Like they have, membership fees that community members can't afford. Unfortunately, we are in the poorest U.S. congressional district financially. So, this is about equity and economic justice, health justice, so many different things. This space is going to have an amphitheater, commercial kitchen for hopefully food justice related programming, and so on and so on. So just to wrap up, this is an amazing brochure and explainer that we co-published with what is known as the Center for Urban Pedagogy. This visualizer, this explainer touches on how community land trusts are holistic and wide-ranging, and how public land for public good is not only about housing. It could be for green spaces, it could be for community hubs like the Heart Center, it could be for protecting small businesses, et cetera, et cetera. The other thing I forgot to mention about the Green Space Equity Committee that is a part of Nicely, just before I wrap up, is that we are all about data as well. So we created with Earth Economics, they're based out of the West Coast, NYC Green Impacts Calculator, which I can share in the chat. This is helping communities across the 5 boroughs in New York City with understanding what are the economic benefits of producing green spaces in their respective neighborhood. This data is so important when we speak with policymakers, funders. We all know the social benefits. It's really powerful when communities are equipped with the economic benefits. So I'll share that as well. And I thank you all for your time and happy to connect after this call. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. We always want to make time and space for victories, especially ones that are very long and hard fought. And Grace dropped a link to a recent Next City article that walks through some of this history getting to the Heart Center. And we're just so excited that this physical, tangible, manifestation, right, of community stewardship and leadership and power building is happening, and really appreciate you sharing a bit about the story and the obstacles, right? That's the reality of this work and of what it takes. Please share questions for Matthew, comments, thoughts in the chat. We'll also kind of queue those up after our next speaker. But I'm excited to get to feature and spotlight Warinda Harris right now, coming to us live from Austin, Texas, New York to Texas. We're shifting gears a little bit. And I will say, I don't want to sway the conversation, but Matthew, oftentimes when people hear New York, they hear New York City, they think, oh, this stuff is easy, this moves forward. You have the leadership, you have the buy-in, you have the political will, and you really noted that it has always been an uphill challenge, that there's forces large and strong that really push back against that, and sharing resources and models for that. I think when we look at Texas, even Austin, Warinda, we think uphill challenges too when it comes to land justice and health equity. And I've just been so inspired by the work of CTI and your partnership and your individual work, Warinda, and the spirit and energy that you've brought to it. So I'm really excited to get to share that with this group. I'm about to tee up your slides in just a second, but just wanted to kind of welcome you to our main stage and appreciate you being here today. So I'm going to get you started. Oops, I knew I was going to press that. All right. Warinda, I'm handing it off to you, and you can let me know how to help you move along some of the slides.
Perfect. That's great. That's great. Thank you so much for that intro, and thank you, Matthew. I love when you said that you're not new to it, you're true to it. We will share that Central Texas Interfaith is a little bit new to green space equity, and we had to true up super quick. And one of the beautiful things about this cohort is that we have partners like South Bronx Unite to learn with, to listen to talk about what's true in Texas that's also true in New York, how things are different, and how we move together to make these things work. So I just want to say, and Sandra really gave an overview of who we are and what we'll do. So the only thing I would add to that is that we are a community power organization. And we work with many communities who are accustomed to having negative experiences with power. They have seen it used against them, and they have felt helpless in the face of it. So in this work, we focus on training our community members to develop a new relationship with power, to recognize that it does not have to be negative and it does not have to be one-sided, just coming at them to be taken. And we're very intentional about teaching this. So we provide a space in which our neighbors can discover their own voices and meet power with their own power. We provide opportunities for our member institutions to negotiate effectively throughout the political process with our local and state governments around issues of common concern. So that's how we came into this issue. During the pandemic, we were checking in with our leaders from across Central Texas, and I work in Austin, particularly in East and South Austin, which is or had historically been primarily Black and brown. And we were finding that our folks in East and South Austin were experiencing the pandemic differently from their wealthier West Austin neighbors. Many of them were essential employees, people who could not work from home, and they were dying at a higher rate. They were struggling with how not to bring COVID into their homes and endangering their families. And they were not able to distance outside with their families and see their neighbors at local parks the way that their West Austin neighbors could, because those green spaces in their areas did not have the infrastructure to support that. Often, these are large areas of land. Yes, Austin has lots of green spaces, but a lot of the areas that we had our folks there in were polluted, were industrial, or through climate change. Much of the land was unusable, mosquito infested, places where they could not go. And our leaders as a group began to see this as an equity issue and began to explore how to engage around it. So I wanted to sort of set the table to talk about, how we got into that and what we did about it. The first thing that we did was we got to know the folks in our parks department. We know our city government very well. We spend a lot of time at City Hall. We actually, we're also the seat of state government, so we spend a lot of time at the State House. So we spend a lot of time with political folks, and we have developed those relationships with them. We did not know our parks folks, and we got into that relationship very early in our P3 tenure because Prevention Institute came to Austin during a park study through City Parks Alliance and introduced us to those folks. And we took it from there. We got into a relationship with them. We got to know them. We asked them a lot of questions. Our leaders shared their stories with them, telling them about where they lived in Austin and what they were seeing, and began to develop an imagination with our Parks Department about what it could look like when people in the community were the first people to identify land and begin to look for ways to activate it. One of the biggest things that we did early on was learn the history of our Parks Department and how that played into the history of our city. And that brought us to an understanding of the 1928 Master Plan, which pushed African American and Latino residents who had been living in all areas of the city into one area in East Austin, thereby creating multiple parks, avoiding creating multiple parks and utility systems in the city to satisfy separate but equal statutes. And this was achieved through ordinance, through redlining, through coercion, and sometimes through violence. And this color line ran along what was then called East Avenue, which is now Interstate 35, which is the major interstate highway that runs north-south through Austin. It actually runs from Laredo, South Texas, near the border to Mexico, all the way to Duluth, Minnesota. And right there in the middle of it, that is the dividing line for East and West Austin. And for many years, that was also the dividing line for people of color and white people in Austin. And I give that to you to just sort of set you up for the next slide. Next slide, please. So what you're looking at here is a parcel of land that is about a mile east of I-35 and the city center. It's across the street from Houston-Tillotson University, which is our city's local HBCU that just celebrated its sesquicentennial, 150 proud years in East Austin. It is also our city's oldest institution of higher learning. So we have student leaders at Houston-Tillotson University, and we began to hold house meetings there on campus on the subject of Black men's mental health. We were listening, our leaders were listening to young men over and over again talk about how they loved their school and they felt safe on campus. But as soon as they hit the sidewalk on Chacon Street, which is to the left of your screen, they felt that they were seen as threats to the people around them, people who didn't know anything about them except what they could see. And they talked about yearning for a space outside where they could just sit under a tree and do their calculus homework or just nothing at all and be comfortable in their own skin without someone treating them as a potential criminal to be afraid of. They wanted to be out in nature and they wanted to be out of danger. There happens to be this parcel of land that you're looking at is right across the street from Houston-Tillotson University. And because we had a relationship with our city and our parks department, we didn't know what that was. We went to them and said, who owns it? And it turned out that it had been acquired by the city in 2021 by the Parks Department, and it was sold to them by the Means family, a prominent African-American family in Austin. And it was sold with the family's hope that it would be used for the public, but not necessarily knew what it would be used for. And our students said, we want to activate this space. It's right across the street. We already have a team of people who are interested in it. We didn't know this was a park. We bet the neighborhood didn't know that it was a park. And the city said, yes, let's do this together. What do you have in mind? The students began to go door to door, talking to neighbors, letting them know first, hey, this is public land. It's already yours. We would like to talk to you about what you'd like to do with it. It's a park. We would like to know what you want to see in it. And that's very important because this is an area since the 1928 plan, when all these folks were pushed into this neighborhood, has now changed and become gentrified. And through that, the complexion of the neighborhood has changed. And so there were many stakeholders in this. There were the people who used to be there, people who have historical ties to it. There are the people who are there right now, including Houston-Tillotson, but also a new group of folks, mostly white, who own the homes around it, who have kids and who can expect to be there for about 30 years at least, and the people who are coming because Austin is booming and we know they're coming. And so the students gathered all those folks in that space with the partnership of the Parks Department, of Austin Parks Foundation, our local nonprofit that supports park use and park sustainability, and with Design Workshop Foundation, an architectural landscape firm that we partnered with the city on applying for a grant and won to show us how to both research the area and begin to think about what might best fit given the historical significance of this space. And in doing that, we had several events over the past couple of years where these students at Houston-Tillotson and their professors entered into an experiential learning course so that they held classes outside, they engaged neighbors, and part of that course was to understand the language, understand the landscape, understand the history and the culture, and bring everyone together to decide what they wanted to see in a park here. It's a very small piece of land, as you can see. It's, as I said, it's across the street from Houston-Tillotson. It's also across the street from a Baptist church, another CTI member, an elementary school, a community care clinic, and there were lots of stakeholders involved in this. It is also about half a mile from Rosewood Park, which is the park that was established for African American residents during that 1928 phase. And this space features a large heritage oak towards the west end that all the folks said, we agree, we want that as a focal point, but we'd also like an area of refuge. We also want this to be a gathering space. We want to honor the roots of the neighborhood. And next slide, please. together, they worked with the Parks Department through a number of survey phases where they partnered with the Parks Department to survey the neighborhood and to survey, citywide, also to get again door-to-door, door knocking, getting neighbors' opinions, and then sponsoring more events where they brought people into the field to into this space to have some imagination about what they'd like to see. And this final draft concept that is on our Parks Department website is based on the input and the effort and the imagination of those students, those neighbors, and their Central Texas Interfaith partners. And as you can see, it includes the things that they wanted to see. And this project was the pilot. It became the basis for what we are calling phase 0 activation. We have learned through our research that 62% of undeveloped parkland in Austin, and that is parkland that has been purchased by the Parks Department but has not yet been developed. 62% is in East Austin. There are lots of places that community can come in and say, we would like to talk to you about what we would like to see there. And so phase 0 activation means that community directs and engages on what they would like to see in the spaces that are before them, as opposed to the city making plans and then bringing it to community and saying, look, here's this great thing that we have. Why don't you like it? So that was the first, and right now this is under permit. There is funding for it. We will also be with our community partners, raising funding if needed, but the city has greenlit this and it is in the permitting phase. Next slide. And I see that I'm over time, so I'm going to move very quickly on this one. So this is Tillery Field, Tillery Pond. It is about a little over a mile and a half east of Houston-Tillotson University. Go back. I'm sorry. Go back one, please. Yeah, there we go. And so it's about a mile and a half east of Houston-Tillotson. It is a water detention basin managed by the City of Austin's Watershed Protection Department. It's a total 22 acres. And near that is an elementary school, the East Side campus of Austin Community College, the Willie Mae Kirk Library branch of Austin Public Library, Santa Julia Catholic Church, and a pecan grove that is now a pocket park that we weighed in on, which is next to a small housing development. So there's a lot going on in this neighborhood. And for 20 years, about 9.5 acres of this space has been used with the city's permission by East Austin Soccer Club, which is an immigrant-led soccer league of about 300 children and families and growing. And the city gave it permission to play on it, but it is, as you can see, not really a soccer field. The Coach Guzman and his team, they mow it, they pick up trash, they try to keep it in usable condition for soccer, but climate change has made that difficult. More drought equals dry, dusty ball fields with large cracks forming in the soil beneath it, and that increases the risk of injury. The grass needs watering, they need space for night games. It's not ideal. And Houston-Tillotson, less than 2 miles away, has a soccer team that regularly competes in the collegiate playoffs, but has no home field. They host their games out of town in a city to the north of Austin. And they need a usable field. They need somewhere that they can meet and host games on a collegiate level. Yes, Rashonda, wow. It is inexplicable. However, we brought them together. They have worked on other issues together. We realized that they had a common problem, and we brought them together in house meetings, which are small group conversations, and relational meetings, one-on-one meetings, to get to know each other, their neighbors, and to talk about how they might solve this common problem. And what they did was they figured that their interests aligned, and they developed a solution that involves shared use and maintenance of this field. Under a joint application to the City of Austin, they have requested permission to create a collegiate level soccer field with two fields, two playing fields, and two practice fields. With the City of Austin's neighborhood partnering program, which was under threat of budget cuts last year, but was given funding in part because we went to them and talked to every one of our city council members and explained the importance of this program. They are presenting a joint application to the city with the cities asking the city to install an irrigation system, fencing, lights, ADA compliant access, and then they will maintain the field. Houston Tillotson will add it to its regular rotation of maintenance and security. East Austin Soccer Club will continue to monitor it to make sure that it, if anything comes up, that they address them very quickly. And that we have gone to, again, the city council members to let them know we are fully in support of this. And the vote for that is next Tuesday, June 9th. And we hope to have a very good result with the city providing infrastructure funding and the partners providing continued maintenance. So those two are examples of what we see as phase zero activation. What happens when a community understands that land that is already for them can be activated by them ahead of funding, ahead of any imagination on anyone else's part, and then partnering with our city to make those things happen. And I'll turn it back over to you, Sandra.
Brenda, thank you. And June 9th, we are going to be sending all the good vibes, all the support for this really important vote, and hoping that it really honors all of this work and energy and vision that you and your partners put forward. What an exciting time. And thank you for sharing those two examples. I could hear you talk all day. So I was just like, great, let's just walk through this. So I welcome anything you want to add, Warinda, but I will pause here for a second to give folks a chance to think about comments, questions, reactions, follow up that we can kind of put forward in our audience and speaker Q&A. While we do that, I'm also going to voice over some slides that share some, not all of the resources that we've talked about today, so that you can begin to pull these in and access them when it makes sense for you, leaf through them. I think everyone here is really interested and available to follow up with thoughts and comments that may be coming up from taking a look at these resources. PI's End, we invite you to join our P3 National Network, which is a sign up. It's sort of a listserv right now. We'll push out a lot of these resources and upcoming opportunities to continue the dialogue. And I know for Lincoln Institute of Land Policy, they also have a great mailing list and a lot of resources, communications coming out there. Follow them on social media. And we've started to drop some of the links and articles from our partners at SBU and CTI. So we will curate that list together. We are going to share our contact information, our individual contact information. It's up here on your screen. We'll drop it in the chat and we'll follow up via email. So you'll get the slide, the recording, the link to the new Public Land for Public Good document, these resources, our contact info, all the ways you can stay connected to us, because that is what we want. I'm going to exit out of here because I really like seeing people's names and faces. If they want to come on screen, you don't have to, but it's always great to have a dialogue and a conversation all together. Hey, Elsa, I see you. Saw you earlier. So good to have you. So questions, thoughts, reactions, we can take them through chat. We can unmute. This is our time together. I know there's a lot to reflect on. What's coming up for folks? Go over and check because I can't see it. Warinda, yes, I invite you to talk a little bit about the toolkit that you developed. That would be great.
My mistake. I was so excited. I forgot about a major a major component. In our work with College Row and Austin Parks and Rec and with Design Workshop Foundation, the students work with Design Workshop Foundation to create a park activation toolkit because we learned that there was so much public land, there are park land that people didn't know about and didn't really know how to use it. We used College Row as a pilot to get in there and develop something that, you know, could say, yes, this is a park, and what would you like to do in this space? And then a step-by-step toolkit on how to activate it. If you have a certain number of people, do you need a permit? If you want a food truck, you know, what does that look like? Can you have a crawfish boil? That was me. I asked for that because my family's from Louisiana, and we learned that you could. And 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 a step-by-step resource that anyone can go on to figure out how they might activate what is a park but may be undeveloped in their neighborhood. And that's something that we're really proud of as well, because that was student design with student input. The other thing that was so great about this opportunity was that it went so well that the Design Workshop Foundation, the foundation arm of Design Workshop, provided 7 interns of color an opportunity to go into the space last summer and work with us on conceptual designs that the Parks Department eventually used as part of their input.
That's really powerful. Wanda, how do folks access the toolkit or when? Tell us a little
I
bit.
will get that into the chat.
Even better. Thank you, Orinda. I also saw earlier, I think it was Michael, asked to see the last slide in your presentation that we just kind of had to click through, and I'm happy to bring that up. And if there's folks with comments or questions, we can do, I'm going to say that we can do 2 things at one time, and you can test me on whether that's actually a thing. But let me bring this up for Michael and anyone who is just like, hey, we want to see this. Do you want to say just like a couple sentences, Warren, about what we're looking at?
Yes, sorry about that. I was looking to put the toolkit in the chat.
I know,
Yes,
I
so
asked you
this
to do like
is
3 things at one
no,
time.
no. I'm also going to walk and chew gum. So this is the proposal. Again, this is 2 NCAA regulation playing fields, and then 2 practice fields. And beyond that, there is the Willie Mae Kirk Library. Part of the proposal is also for the HT students to tutor the East Austin Soccer Club students, so that they have developed a relationship where they do support each other, coming to each other's events and games. And so we want to continue that relationship. The proposal includes an irrigation system, and fencing, repairs to the fencing where it needs to, and then replacing some existing fencing, signage that confirms what it is, so that folks know that it's not a dog park, uh, lighting to make sure that there's available lighting for night games. And those are the things that the city is working on with us to provide. We also are beginning, once we have the green light, we have folks in the neighborhood, businesses, and other nonprofits who are working with us on funding other things. We need benches, we need seating. We are looking at how to provide restrooms, all the things that we would need to really make this a comfortable collegiate area, collegiate side space. So there is both the partnership with the city, and then there's also the partnership that comes from within the community to raise the funds that are needed for what the city cannot do.
You were in questions, comments, anything coming up for folks? I noted someone mentioned this in the chat earlier about the importance of partnership and collaboration and how that sort of ebbs and flows. And Sam, I think like at the start of what you were describing, you kind of were like, you kind of have to know who owns the land and like what's their deal with it, right? What's their vision? Can you say a little bit more about that? And I'll invite the other speakers to just talk about, those maybe first few phases of partnership and bringing stakeholders along through a very
Yeah,
long and arduous process.
absolutely. And that's where, our campaign is framed around community land, all those different kinds of actors. And the powerful tool that CGS is up does start and focus on publicly owned land. Because there's governments are a good point to start. They tend to be a central, accountable to the community organization in varying degrees depending on the community. But um, what working with CGS and creating that multi-jurisdictional inventory does for the governments in a community is it helps them all interact with each other. Um, and swapping land between government agencies is actually fairly easy to do. It's not always allowed, but you can easily change those rules at the local level. Um, it not far from me in Denver, there's an example of a uh, it was like it's a large plot with a tremendously complicated history, but the last chapter of it was a golf course that went defunct, was sold to a developer who wanted to turn it into mixed use, housing, affordable housing, shopping, grocery store, park space, a whole bunch of things. And there was a huge 4 year long community fight over what to do with it. And for those 4 years, it was an argument over keep it all green space or develop some parts of it. An event, and the developer is sitting there with $24 million worth of land that they've purchased, and you know they can't get their return on they need to get $24 million worth of value out of this land. They can't do that if it all stays park. And the community wants it to be all park. And so what happens is for 4 years, it sat there with fencing around it and it wasn't used for anything. Um, Finally, the city of Denver was able to manage a land swap with the developer, giving them a series of parcels in different parts of the city where housing was needed, and in exchange got the land, and now it's the largest single acquisition of park space for the city of Denver. In order to do that, city of Denver needs to know what parcels it owns, what their best use is for, and the more you can overlay the other public actors who own other parts of land, the more you get a complete picture, the better you can cite things. And when you start with that public, city owned land inventory, say, as an example, you can then, and this is a thing that's happening in San Diego, use that to set the table and say, hey, all the other civic landowners, our community foundation, that hospital, religious institutions, this is our map. Do you want to show us what you have on it? And see if there's now maybe we can piece together a bunch of small fragmented parcels and come up with something really impactful for the community. So it's a resource that really can generate a lot of other resources.
That's such a great example, Sam, and the idea of like land swap. Like that's a strategy, a mechanism, something to really kind of infuse the conversation around that. Because oftentimes the first answer is no, right? And what a lot of the advocates and practitioners that I hear from, and Warinda and Matthew talking about this, like you can't take that first no. You have to really push past it and get back to like, well, the community has a vision and has a plan for this. I think Rashonda might have unmuted for a bit when we opened up for Q&A. So I just want to see if there's any comment or thought there. Hey, Rashonda, welcome. You're on camera. It's so nice to see you. Any thoughts or questions coming up for you?
I just wanted to thank everybody for sharing because it's been very inspiring. I'm from the city of St. Louis, and we are in the process of administering disaster recovery funds. We both impacted by the 22 flooding, and then also in 2025 had a horrific tornado that was tornado wrap, so 2 in 1. And we had LMI population, sorry, CDBG World. We had low moderate income population that have been affected by both the flood and the tornado. So, and we have a lot of underutilized land owned by our land bank, the land Equalization Authority, and I have been supercharged by your sharing. I thank you for your work. Everybody on the call, I didn't even know this existed, and one of our coworkers, um, Andrea, she told me to jump on, and I see why. So, just I wanted to send you some positive energy back because I know it's hard what you're doing, and maybe we can share our maps and stories in some years to come with you all to, you know, keep the fire burning. That's all.
Rashonda, that's so thoughtful and energizing. And I see Warinda and Matthew and Sam and Rhea and Grace. Everyone's being like, yes, let's stay connected. This is the opportunity, right? This is the challenge at hand, but also the opportunity at hand is to share and connect and leverage all of this amazing work. So we will take that invitation and keep that connection going. I also see there's someone from St. Louis here, a couple of folks. So, St. Louis representing here as well. And that's what we want is just folks to connect with one another. Um, I know we're coming up on the last few minutes. Welcome any other thoughts, reactions, questions that are coming up. Oh, I see a hand, Jean. Okay, I was looking in that direction. I'm so glad.
Oh, lucky
How
me.
are you?
This was just incredible. Thank y'all for the work you're doing. It's super inspiring. I'm in Florida, and in our county, we're in North Central Florida. We have a surtax, and it's a voter supported initiative, and it's one way we've been able to really protect our funding for public lands and to give the voters a say. And so it's every 10 years it's come up, and it's now 25 years old. And just kind of allocated for my program, there's 150 million over 10 years. And it might vary year to year based on revenues. It's a half penny surtax on sales in the county, but it's extraordinary to have this kind of just source of funding, and I don't have to go chasing grants for projects. Of course, I try to get cost share money, but I was just curious if anyone has been able to, if anyone's working off of a surtax initiative, if anyone's got experience with that. That's something I'm just always curious about. This is the first time I'm a year into this job. I came from the community land trust world, and it's my first time working in government. Um, so it's also just really interesting to see it from that side of things. I've never been in government. I was always working with government, sometimes against the government, and now I'm in it. And so just curious if anyone's got that experience, and if you want to just even be offline, I'll put my email in the chat because I'd love to get up with anyone who just is dealing with anything like that that's similar, like a bond initiative. Sometimes that's what they're called. So thank y'all
Yep.
so much for the work you're doing.
Love that. Thank you for putting out that request for just learning more, right? So bond initiative, folks that are really working through that sort of funding mechanism to support these goals. If there is anyone, feel free to drop that in chat and we will make some connections. And if not, Jean, we will do some curation and some crowdsourcing and see if we can get, some support and just some communication lines there. Thank you for that. I know folks are hopping off. We thank you for being here. We know 90 minutes is a really long real estate for folks during the day, during the week. We appreciate it. We do want to keep this conversation going, so we invite you to join and follow up with us. And then I think I'm just going to thank everyone who participated today, who answered, our opening question, who's been sharing reactions. I love reactions. I think it's just such a great way to get it's temperature read from a lot of people all at once. And then special thank you to our speakers and our leaders today for just having the hard challenge of putting down a lot of work, a lot of depth into a short amount of time, but you've clearly sparked and ignited a lot of energy here today. So thank you, Orinda and Matthew and Raina and Sam, to the PI team, to the P3 network that's out here, to our partner, Karen Ernst. Thank you so much for everything. Today, we will be in touch. Drop your contact information. We have it if you registered, and we hope to see you again for a follow-up conversation. Thank you all. Have a good rest of your day.